Unexplainable horrors. 3 spine-chilling forest camping stories that expose sinister secrets. Mark, Laura, Emily, and Sarah stepped into the Appalachian wilderness, their laughter echoing off the trees. But little did they know, the forest had its own whispers, dark secrets that awaited them. As they set up their campsite by the glimmering lake, twilight danced through the branches like the ghostly fingers of lost souls, beckoning them deeper into the shadows. The chaotic year that had pulled them apart felt like a distant memory, but knots tightened in their chests, reminding them that they were still very much on edge. Just like old times, Mark chuckled, trying to keep the unease at bay. But even the cool breeze seemed to carry unsettling murmurs. The laughter faded, replaced by a heavy silence that clamored for their attention. Each creak of the branches only intensified the metal taste of fear in the air, as if the trees were alive and watching. Emily stole nervous glances at Sarah, who fidgeted beside their mother, her face pale against the darkening woods. Then, breaking the silence, the first strange noise sent a shiver down Laura's spine. A sharp crack echoed, too close for comfort. "It's probably just a deer," Mark reassured, though his voice wavered, betraying his own uncertainty. The sun dipped below the horizon, the last of its warmth gone, swallowed by the shadows creeping ever closer to the camping spot. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each snap of a twig, each rustle in the bushes harbored an unseen threat, a sense of being hunted. The chill in the air morphed into something palpable as their heartbeats synced with the rhythm of their fear. Mark's stories of previous camping trips felt hollow now, a thin veneer over their growing anxiety. The whispers in the wind had turned sinister, urging the girls toward the edge of the underbrush. Then they found it a rusting truck, half collapsed, half concealed among the gnarled roots and thick undergrowth. The paint was peeling, just like truth, and the sight knotted their stomachs. They exchanged frightened glances, caught up in a silent horror that wrapped around them like fog. The truck wasn't just any vehicle. It was tied to a missing child they had heard about back home, a grim reflection of the dark reality lurking beneath their suburban lives. Panic surged through them. What had felt like an escape transformed into a waking nightmare. As they backed away, shadows flickered at the edges of their campfire, warping their surroundings into an unsettling scene. Suddenly, Mark's calm facade cracked. Whispers crawled through the trees, conspiracy swirling in their family dynamic. The warmth of the laugh shared moments ago felt like a distant memory now, swallowed by the darkness that strangled their trust as the night deepened. Emily and Sarah took a step back from their father, suspicion replacing familial bonds. Twisted loyalties emerged, revealing secrets about Mark's connections, ties to the very darkness that overshadowed their peaceful lives. The very people they had trusted, their neighbors, their community, now felt like an unseen menace lurking just out of sight. With their world unmoored, dread settled over the family, eclipsing all hope. The rustling continued, closing in, a perverse invitation to discover the horrors hiding just beyond their campsite. They had come for nature's healing embrace, but were ensnared in an entanglement of fear, distrust, and now, uncertainty about each other. What moved in the shadows? And could they survive the unknown that thrived just beyond the flickering light of their campfire? Mark's palms felt slick as he fumbled for the flashlight, the beam flickering weakly against the oppressive darkness. Panic clawed at his throat. "Stay close," he whispered, but the urgency in his voice didn't hide the tremor. Emily and Sarah were rooted to the spot, their eyes wide pools of fear. The shadows seemed to pulse, breathing in and out. Laura's heart raced. She could see their breath fogging in the icy air, each exhale a small wisp of panic. The cool lake reflected the night sky, a mirror of chaos, and every ripple echoed like distant laughter. "Let us just go back to the fire," Laura suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. But the fire seemed feeble now, a small circle of warmth held captive by the encroaching doom. As they edged back, a low, guttural sound slithered through the trees, synchronizing their fear into one glaring reality. "Did you guys hear that?" Mark's voice cracked, his bravado dying. "Maybe it's just the wind," Emily offered weakly, but her eyes betrayed her. They darted to the forest edge where the shadows loomed. "No," Sarah said suddenly, clutching her sister's arm. "Sounded like someone talking." Each step toward the fire felt like a trap, but there was no other choice. They needed the safety of its flicker, the illusion of warmth. As they gathered, the glow twisted their faces into grotesque masks of fear. Mark tried to cultivate their spirits, but his heart sank as he watched the little girls retreat inward, disbelief festering like a wound. "I'm calling for help," he declared suddenly, pulling out his phone. The screen was a single beacon of light but flashed no service. No, this can't be happening." The wooden crackle of the fire heightened their senses. Then another noise, sharper this time, shattered the heavy silence. A snarl echoed from the dark. Mark cursed under his breath, and Laura spun, her gaze darting among the trees. "I don't like this. We should have left when we had the chance," Sarah whimpered, her small voice barely filling the void around them. Then, as if on cue, a figure loomed at the tree-line, a tall silhouette that commanded attention. It stood still, watching them, fear wrapped around their throats, choking their breaths to silence. "Mark," Emily's whispered plea broke through the thickness of dread. "What is that?" "I don't know," he stammered, unwilling to tell them the truth. His mind raced through unspeakable things. What if it was someone looking for the child? Then that voice again, closer, a whisper threading its way through the branches. "Help me help." It was a child's tone, disembodied and eerie, echoing off the trees like a taunt. The family recoiled together, drawn into a tight huddle. As disbelief turned to horror, they scanned the edges of the dark, searching for the child whose cries distorted the air. What was lurking just beyond their view? Dropping his phone in the fray, Mark moved toward the fire, his heart hammering loudly in his ears. "We stay together. Suddenly, the ground rumbled beneath them, a low rumble that reverberated through their bodies. The forest seemed to alive, stirring, shifting as though the trees themselves were waking from a long slumber as they stood frozen. Unease wrapped tightly around their chests. A blur darted through the darkness, a quick flash of movement at the corner of their vision. Then, a high-pitched scream pierced through the night, sending shockwaves of terror coursing through them. "What was that?" Laura gasped. In unison, they turned toward the sound, breaths quickening. The darkness spread like ink, blurring their reality and enveloping any semblance of safety. They were no longer just a family camping in the woods. They were prey to an unfathomable horror. "Run!" Mark yelled, but as they stumbled towards the campsite, the flickering light began to fade. Then darkness fell, swallowing them whole. What awaited them in the depths of the forest? Would they find light again, or were they led into an irreversible nightmare? The silence swallowed them, thick and heavy. Mark could barely hear his own heartbeat, but the darkness around them hummed with malevolence. "Stay close. Don't let go of each other," he called, but his voice felt small against the void. It was suffocating. With senses heightened, they sprinted towards the faint glow of dying embers, the only means of comfort left. It dwindled before them like a breath on the verge of extinction, and the shadows seemed to reach out, fingers elongating, wanting to snatch them back into the shadows. What was that scream? Emily's voice was shaky, the fear in it palpable. "I don't know," Mark snapped, his patience thinning. "We can't stop. Just keep running." Every crackle of twigs underfoot echoed ominously. The air turned sharper, colder, and in those fleeting moments between hurried breaths, something shifted in the darkness behind them. A rustle, a movement. Mark stole a glance over his shoulder. Nothing but the ink-black night. The feeling of being watched prickled at the back of his neck. It wasn't just the trees that seemed alive. It was something deeper, something breathing. As they approached the fire, The warmth evaporated, replaced by an oppressive chill. The flames flickered violently, as if sensing danger. Mark felt sick in his stomach. Something was wrong. Where's Laura? He suddenly realized, spinning back around. Panic clawed at him, cutting deeper than fear as he found Emily and Sarah staring in horror at the edge of the treeline. I thought she was behind us, Sarah cried, her voice breaking. Laura! Mark shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of dread. The whisper returned, weaving through the trees like a serpent. Help! Help me! It was lower this time, more urgent, and it sent a spear of ice shooting through Mark's spine. Stay here, he commanded, stepping toward the nearby shadows. Each step felt like stepping into an abyss, the dark pulling him in. Laura! His flashlight flickered weakly, the beam barely piercing the thick, clinging darkness. He fought against the urge to turn back, the instinct to flee. But Laura needed him. She could be in danger, alone with whatever hunted them. The whisper morphed into a painful shriek, sharp enough to slice through the night. Help! Laura's voice, fractured and filled with panic, shrieked from somewhere deep within the woods. Before he could react, a form barreled past him, hair flying wild in the wind. It was a small figure shrieking in terror. It wasn't Laura. Mark, run! Emily cried, her eyes wide and filled with horror. A shadow surged at the edge of their sight, slipping between the trees like liquid formlessness. The ground trembled again, and a palpable dread gripped Mark's heart. He turned back, running toward the fire, his breath coming in great gasps now. What did they unleash? Mark could feel a presence close on his heels, and as he crossed the threshold of light, he threw himself in front of the girls. The fire flickered violently, as if trying to ward off the darkness that threatened to spill into their sanctuary. Mark, it's coming, Sarah gasped, pointing. He spun, heart racing. A grotesque shape materialized from the shadows, moving closer, long limbs that bent at unnatural angles. A face obscured by a mask of shadows. What do we do? Emily whimpered, pressing against her sister. Mark's mind raced, frantically searching for an answer that didn't exist. We have to fight it. We can't let it take us. But as he raised his flashlight, the beam flickered one final time, pooling into darkness. The creature lunged forward, a snarl tearing through the night. In a fractured moment, amidst the chaos, a new voice broke through. A high-pitched laughter mingled with the shadows, piercing the air like freshly drawn blood. There was something sinister, almost playful, about it. And in that instant, Mark realized with horror that what had caught them wasn't seeking help at all. The darkness swallowed everything, but even as it fell away, a single word echoed out into the void, filled with dread and mockery. Game. What had they stepped into? With a feeling of impending doom looming over them, they stood on the precipice of an unimaginable nightmare. But it was only the beginning. The ground shook beneath them, a tremor that reverberated through Mark's bones. He had no time to second-guess himself. Survival instincts kicked in, primal and raw. The fire's flickering light danced wildly, uncertain in the waking nightmare. Get ready, he shouted, the words bursting from him like a desperate incantation. But as he turned to face the creature, the chaos felt surreal. It swayed, the beast hovering barely a breath away. Its elongated limbs twisted together, dark and slick like tendrils of smoke, whispering curses in a language they could not understand. Mark's heart raced as he landed on a horrifying realization. The creature's face, if you could call it that, wore the essence of misery and mockery. Run! Emily's voice cut through the thick tension like a knife. Mark didn't need to think twice. The three of them bolted as one, feet pounding against the forest floor. Hushed rustles taunted them from behind. Shadows slithered and hissed, echoing their frantic breaths and the thudding of their racing hearts. What if we don't make it? Sarah gasped, her innocence bleeding through the terror. We have to. Mark grunted back, pushing through the suffocating dread. We can't let it win. Their escape led them deeper into the woods, where the trees loomed like silent sentinels, bearing witness to their flight. The further they ran, the more the air thickened, pressing heavily against their skin. Even the darkness felt alive, pulsating with a malevolence that was suffocating. They stumbled upon a clearing, panting and wide-eyed. The moon illuminated the space, a strange and ghostly light. Sarah visibly trembled, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Look," she whispered, pointing with a quivering finger, and in the center of the clearing lay an old tree, its gnarled roots twisted like the fingers of the lost. Mark felt drawn to it, almost like it was calling to him. Petals fell from the tree, but instead of the delicate beauty of nature, they carried a putrid scent that made him recoil. "Do you think it's safe here?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Mark replied, scanning the edges of the clearing where shadows clung. "Whatever that thing is, it's hunting us now. We can't stay put." But as they readied to leave, the laughter returned, echoing around them, chilling the air. It felt as if the forest itself entertained their plight, reveling in the chase. And in that laughter, a hint of familiarity lurked just beyond Mark's grasp. "Where is it?" Sarah whimpered, stepping back, the desperation in her eyes making Mark's gut twist. It's playing with us," he murmured, gripping the flashlight tightly as if it were a weapon. Suddenly, from out of the corner of his eye, he spotted movement near the tree. A figure stepped into the moonlight. Mark's heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a creature. It was a girl. Her hair was wild, eyes wide with fear, stained with darkness. Yet she seemed unfazed by the horror around her. "Help me," the girl cried, voice filled with a strange, eerie calm that didn't match her wild appearance. "Laura?" Mark breathed, hope igniting despite the grotesque situation. The girl nodded slowly, yet her gaze darted nervously beyond them. "You shouldn't have come here." The shadows coiled around them, listening keenly. Mark felt the air shift. "What do you mean?" he stammered. "It's watching," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "and it's always hungry." Before he could respond, the laughter surged again, more boisterous, converging around them like a noose tightening. The presence in the darkness rippled excitedly, perhaps relishing the game they never wanted to play. Mark froze, paralyzed by an unyielding sense of doom. The girl's expression twisted, a silent plea urging him to understand something vital. But the shadows closed in, pulsating, ready to strike. "Remember, it only takes one." Her voice trailed off, swallowed by the chaos closing in as the creature lunged into the clearing with a primal roar. Mark's instincts screamed at him to run again. But now they weren't just fleeing. They were lured deeper into a web thicker than the night itself. What had just begun might be the game that would cost them everything. The creature's roar pierced the night like a dagger. A guttural sound, primal and full of rage. Mark felt it reverberate through his chest, shaking the very core of him. He didn't think, he just acted, tearing Sarah and Emily along with him. "Over here," Laura shouted, her wild eyes wide with urgency. Mark followed her lead. They skidded around the gnarled tree, the ground beneath them uneven, roots clawing at their feet. He glanced back, just for a second, the light of the flashlight flickering as it swung wildly. The laughter morphed into a cacophony, circling them, taunting. "Don't look back," Laura warned, her voice sharp, cutting through the noise. They ran deeper into the shadows, branches whipping against their skin. Mark's heart raced, each beat thudding louder in his ears. He was aware of every rasp of his breath, the urgency filling him with dread ready to spill over. An anguished scream broke through the forest, a sound that echoed with a familiarity Mark couldn't place. It made his stomach twist. "Did you hear that?" he panted, panic creeping in. "They're playing with us," Laura replied, glancing over her shoulder. Her breathless tone suggested more than just fear. There was understanding, a cold acceptance. "Who's playing? What's happening?" Mark demanded, but the chill in her eyes held back more secrets than she dared share. Stopping abruptly, she pressed a finger to her lips. "Listen." They fell silent, breaths hanging thick in the air. The darkness strained with possibilities. Instead of the creature's pursuit, another sound reached them. Low whispers, weaving through the trees. Each word wrapped around Mark like a vine, choking with dread. A voice drifted in, slithering through the air. Instinctively, Mark's gaze darted toward the sound, his body tense, ready to bolt again. They need one, Laura murmured, urgency creasing her brow. We can't let it take anyone. Take anyone? What does that mean? Sarah's voice cracked, her eyes wide, reflecting the horror they all felt but could scarcely articulate. I didn't mean to come here, Laura said, crouching behind a thick trunk. We were warned, but I thought it wouldn't happen again. What wouldn't happen again? Mark pressed, fear spilling over into frustration. As if answering his anxiety, the ground trembled again. Behind them, a flurry of leaves whirled up, caught in an unseen storm. The laughter morphed into cries, ghostly remnants echoing from the depths of their fears. A chorus of lost souls. They were trapped like us, Laura whispered, and they chose one at a time. A terrible realization crashed over Mark. The fear he felt wasn't just for them anymore. It was the dread of making a choice, of being forced to give something up, a friend, a life. Each word resonated within him like a death knell. Run deeper into the woods, Laura commanded, her voice lost to the frantic beat of their hearts. That's our only chance. We might lose someone, or it might take all of us. Pushing forward, they darted between trees, the noise of the forest morphing around them, a blend of rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and the haunting symphony of the beast lurking closer. Mark urged himself to think clear, keep moving forward, but every breath felt heavier, every step more futile than the last. Suddenly, Laura stumbled, her footing lost in the underbrush. Without hesitation, Mark reached out, grabbing her wrist. But the shadows converged. The beast's presence overtook him, a wall of terror, rancid and relentless. Help, Mark! She screamed as hands, tendrils of mist, dragged her backward. Hold on, he shouted, panic electrifying his words. The shadows closed in like a trap, gnawing at the edges of his sanity. But as he felt her slip further away, the realization hit him like a cold wave. What if she was the one they had to lose? With Laura disappearing into the dark, Mark faced the shadows, heart-pounding, voracious dread boiling in his chest. The decision loomed like the creature itself, impossible to escape. What would he sacrifice to save them all? And before he could respond, an echo of laughter consumed everything, closing the chapter on their attempts to fight. Mark's grip faltered, a surge of panic washing over him like ice water. Laura, pulled into the abyss, was a silhouette against the darkness, a desperate cry fading into the shadows. He felt helpless, anger and terror gripping him in their unrelenting vice. He couldn't just let her go. Laura! Mark shouted, plunging into the swirling darkness. But cold mist enveloped him, a suffocating fog that obscured even the faintest light. The forest around him twisted into a nightmarish maze. Branches clawed at his arms, thorns biting into his skin, as the creature's laughter echoed, mocking him, urging him to turn back. Mark! Emily's panicked voice broke through, snapping him back, if only for a moment. He spun around, finding her and Sarah shrunk against a nearby tree, eyes wide with fear. Stick together, he managed to shout, pulling them close. We have to keep moving. But where? The shadows danced, alive and writhing. Each step seemed heavier, as if the forest itself conspired to drag them down into its depths. He could feel the malevolence, the weight of the forest pressing against his chest, suffocating. The whispers resumed, creeping into his mind like poison. A rhythmic chant, calling out. One must be lost. A realization dawned on him, not just a cold dread, but a gut-wrenching horror. It wasn't just about escaping. It was about sacrifice. Someone had to be left behind to satisfy whatever dark appetite hunted them. They had seen it once. Could they be next? Mark, we can't just stand here. Emily breathed, scanning the branches overhead, her eyes wide, glinting with tears. Then what do we do? He barked, desperation clawing at his throat. The truth tightened around them. They were being hunted, herded like sheep for slaughter. He heard it again, Laura's scream. It sliced through the forest, gut-wrenching and pure. He stumbled, reeling, his heart racing, each beat echoing her name. But the sound was replaced with laughter. A cruel, derisive sound vibrating from every nook and cranny. I can't do this," Emily whispered, shaking with fear. "No," Mark snapped, the urgency driving him to a frenzy. "We're leaving. We have to find Laura." Suddenly, the ground tremored beneath their feet. Fear turned to outright panic when gnarled roots erupted from the dirt, snaking through the air, greedily snatching at their ankles. Mark jumped back, dragging Sarah with him. But Emily remained frozen, transfixed by the chaos swirling around her. "Move!" he yelled again, but it felt hopeless. The reality sank in. The forest was alive, governed by something ancient, something depraved. They were not merely lost. They were prey, and then a deafening roar erupted from the depths. The creature, its form dark and monstrous, lumbering above the intertwining branches, blocking out the moonlight. The ground shook violently, and in that moment, Mark felt the mantle of despair settle heavily on his shoulders. "Run!" he cried, wrenching Emily from her trance. But it was too late. The creature's sharp claws raked across the tree, splintering the bark into a rain of deadly shards. Blood dripped, pooling into the roots, an offering to the darkness. "Choose!" the forest shrieked, voices layered and ethereal, each one piercing through Marcus' sanity. He turned fierce with fury and desperation. There had to be a way out, there must be. His mind raced not just for himself or for Emily and Sarah, but for Laura. They had to find her before the shadows claimed her entirely. Before the forest's hunger swallowed them whole. In the periphery of his mind, he felt the churning dread of guilt. Would they sacrifice themselves to save her? In that moment, he realized it was not just survival. It was about choice. The forest was waiting, watching each of them as they fought against the inevitable. And as the ground heaved, the laughter echoed once more. A chilling warning woven through the darkness. Could they outrun the choices waiting for them in the shadows? Marcus' heart pounded in his chest, the terror wrapping around him like a vice. He felt as if the forest itself was inhaling, tightening its grip. "We have to split up," he gasped, suddenly struck by the desperation of the moment. "It might give us a chance to find her. Are you crazy?" Emily shot back, her face pale as the moonlight flickered through the branches like a dying firefly. "We'll never survive if we separate. It's the only way," Mark insisted. He could see the fear in Sarah's eyes, mirrored on Emily's face. "One of us needs to draw it away. I can do this. Help me. Please. We have to try to save Laura." With an uneasy glance at each other, Emily and Sarah finally nodded. A weight pressed down upon them, thickening the air between them. Gritting his teeth, Mark stepped forward, filled with dread but also with a sick, emboldening hope. "Okay," he said, voice trembling. "We'll meet back here in 10 minutes. Time slipped through their fingers. He turned to run deeper into the forest, hoping that fear would drive him fast enough to outrun whatever hunted them. The more distance he put between himself and the girls, the more the noise behind him faded to nothing. Branches gnawed at him as he stumbled forward, pulling at his clothes, tearing strips of material from his jacket. Fear coursed through his veins like fire. Each rustle in the underbrush made him jump. Was it the creature? Was it Laura? He wanted to stop, to shout, to hear her voice again echo through the trees. But time was running out. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a glimmer of white, a flash like the edge of Laura's shirt caught in a branch. He lunged toward it, heart racing with adrenaline. But another sound stopped him: cold laughter. It was low and taunting, reverberating across the trees, wrapping around him like a shadow. "Foolish boy," it whispered, as if the very forest were alive, conspiratorial and cruel. "You think you can save her? Shut up. Leave her alone." Mark roared, his voice raw with fury, but inside he was quaking. "Choose, little one. One must be lost," the forest echoed back, an unholy choir of whispers weaving between the branches. Despair clawed at him, thumped against his chest with a deafening rhythm. He took a step back, his eyes darting around the darkness. Then he heard it. The unmistakable sound of someone choking on fear. Laura's voice. It was muffled but still clear enough to know she was close. He had to reach her. Mark dashed toward the sound, pushing through the dense foliage. He stumbled through a veil of mist that felt alive, wrapping around him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. Just up ahead, he could see a faint light. The hope ignited in his chest. It could be her. As he broke through the brush, there she was, a figure kneeling on the ground. His heart soared but was cut short in disbelief. "Laura!" he shouted. But the figure turned, the laughter turning into howls of malevolence twisted through his core. That it was not Laura. It was a hollow-eyed imitation, a facsimile of her, grinning wickedly. "You chose it," hissed, and behind him, the darkness stirred with anticipation. "Mark!" He heard Emily's voice behind him, urgency laced with fear. His breath froze in his lungs as he turned, but the forest closed in, branches snapping like fingers. "Run!" he yelled to Emily. "Get Sarah. Get out." But as he turned back to the creature, it lunged, and he plunged deeper into a vortex of shadows. The forest quaked again, and he heard the cries of everyone he loved, lost in the dark expanse. "Mark!" A desperate, familiar voice sliced through the chaos. "Was it real? Laura needs you. Please." Before he could reply, the ghostly laughter erupted again, suffocating him in despair. "Choose!" it howled, and Mark felt the forest's grip tighten, strangling his sanity as fear and rage gripped him. He slammed his fists against the ground, feeling a shift beneath him. What kind of choice would they make? What would they be forced to sacrifice? In that moment of agonizing clarity, he understood. Not just a choice of who to save, but who to lose. And the darkness swarmed around him as he fought against the insatiable hunger of the forest. What twisted endgame awaited them in the shadows? Would they confront the monster inside or become its next meal? Mark gulped down fear as his fists dug into the damp earth. The forest pulsed around him, alive with malice and whispers that slid under his skin. Felt sentient, watching, waiting for the moment he would break. He could still hear Laura's voice, faint and choked, tugging at his heart like a chain. With a desperate surge, he leaped to his feet, pushing himself forward despite the chill running down his spine. He had to ignore the illusion behind him, the twisted reflection of Laura. The grotesque grin haunted him. Would he ever know where she truly was? He fought against the rising tide of panic that threatened to drown him. If this forest wanted to play games, he could join in. "Come on then," Mark shouted, challenging the darkness. "If you think you can make me choose, you're wrong." The laughter came back, rising and swirling like a wind that bit into his skin. "Oh, you'll choose. It will come to that, boy. What will it take to turn your heart?" He ran. He had to focus. His ears were straining. Was that more laughter or the cries of his friends? Mark felt a terrifying heat rise within him, fueled by raw determination. He plunged deeper into the thickening woods, each step heavier, as if the ground itself rebelled against his advance. Suddenly, the air grew cold, the mist wrapping tighter around him. Mark stumbled, feeling disoriented. Shadows flickered, casting nightmarish shapes that danced just beyond his vision. Panic gripped him. Where were Emily and Sarah? Time was slipping through his fingers. Ahead, he spotted a narrow path, faintly illuminated by a faint glow that tugged at the corners of his hope. He sprinted toward it, apprehension curdling in his stomach. As he neared, the light shifted, revealing a stone altar half buried in the undergrowth. Atop it, and offering a small, tattered doll with its button eyes missing dripped darkness. The sight made his stomach churn. "No," he breathed. "It's a trap." But before he could pivot toward retreat, a cacophony of whispers erupted from the ancient trees. They seemed to chant his name, swarming around him, all calling for his surrender. "Choose, choose, choose," they chanted, an insistent rhythm that echoed in his skull. Mark clenched his jaw, trying to shut it out, but the pressure built until he felt it bursting through. "Not today." He screamed, even as trembling tears blurred his vision. Foolish boy, the voices mocked. The ground shuddered beneath him, roots coiling and gasping as if the forest was alive, shifting, hungry for him to kneel. They're closer than you think, he recoiled as shadowy figures flitted just beyond the veil of mist, transparent shapes that seemed all too familiar. It was Laura, Emily, and Sarah, their faces twisted in fear, mouths silently screaming for help. Mark, Sarah's voice cut sharply, urging him to turn. Fight! But the forest tightened around him, squeezing him with unnatural force. Mark couldn't breathe. In that moment of doubt, he felt the weight of their lives resting on his shoulders. Every choice he made carried the gravity of their futures. As the darkness loomed over him, he made a choice no longer just about who to save or sacrifice. I will not feed you, Mark yelled, channeling every ounce of defiance he had left. He could feel the pull of the forest escalating, felt it push back against his resolve. But the shadow's laughter only grew, a dissonant symphony of despair, as time ticked down for him and the girls. Would the forest allow them to escape? Would it take more than just a choice? Get out! He bellowed again, doubling down on his frustrated rage. I will fight. And just like that, the laughter stopped. A silence fell over the twisted trees, allowing the thick air to thicken even more, becoming almost tangible. Mark trembled on the verge of breaking, knowing that the true test was still ahead. The forest stirred, anticipation thick enough to choke on, and he could feel it. Something dark and ancient was about to reveal itself. What would rise from the depths of this nightmare? What final choice awaited him as shadows twisted and the night curled tighter around them? The silence hung like a thick fog, wrapping around Mark, damp and oppressive. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, yet his feet remained rooted. The forest shifted subtly, branches creaking overhead in a macabre symphony, as if the trees themselves were leaning in to witness his desperate resolve. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, a low, ominous thrum that vibrated through the dark soil. The altar before him glimmered faintly, drawing his gaze back to the doll, the darkness pooling like ink around it. Something primal in him recoiled. He took a step back, heart hammering wildly, a frenzied rhythm of fear. The whispers morphed into a singular voice, deep and guttural, resonating within the hollow of his chest. Feed us. Mark squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head furiously. No, I won't give in. He felt the coldness seep into his bones, tasting of despair and hopelessness. But a flicker of strength ignited within him. He was fighting for more than just himself. He was fighting for Laura, Emily, and Sarah. They needed him. A guttural sound echoed from the depths of the forest. A creature stirred. He opened his eyes, his breath hitching as he spotted a figure emerging from the shadows. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that twisted in unnatural angles. Its mouth stretched wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glinted even in the dim light. Choose, it rasped, dripping malice. One for you or all for me. A wave of nausea washed over Mark. The pain of his friend's absence roared louder within him. He could see their faces in that terrifying figure, the shadows of his friends hovering around the altar. Each of them too vulnerable, too close to despair. I won't sacrifice anyone, he shouted, but doubt curled around him like the mist. The figure tilted its head, studying him with beady eyes that glowed, flickering like dying embers. You will. It's the only way. No, he screamed, summoning every ounce of his will. No. And with that word, the ground beneath him lurched violently, the roots squirming like snakes, trying to ensnare him. Panic surged as he toppled backward, landing hard against the altar. The doll's dark essence splashed against his skin, grease-like and foul. He fought the urge to recoil, forcing himself to confront the nightmare. This was it, he thought. He had to hold on. The shadows widened, a thrumming darkness creeping deeper into his mind. Flickers of memories swirled, laughs shared, friendships forged, and moments he cherished. If the forest wanted a choice, it would get one. A choice he would make with the truth of his heart. I choose to fight, He yelled, the words breaking free with a raw energy. The air crackled, and the figure flinched, distorted shadows dancing and writhing around it. Mark felt an unmistakable surge of power rising within him, a pulse that matched the strain of his brotherhood. Let them go. In response, the forest roared, a sound like 1,000 voices blending into one cacophony of fury. The atmosphere thickened, twisting and tangling around him. Mark plunged into the darkness, fueled by rage and hope, an invisible flame flickering in the cold grip of despair. But as he pushed against the onslaught, a snap echoed. Something broke. A piercing scream sliced through the laughter, one that sent chills rushing miles deep into his bones. Mark. Emily's voice echoed through the chaos, fragile, desperate. The forest shuddered again. Would he be able to find her? Would he reach her before the shadows could drag her into the abyss? Fight! I'm coming! He bellowed, the challenge rising like a beacon within the storm of dread. But the ground quaked beneath him, shrill laughter erupting from the shadows. Beneath the din, a sinister murmuring rose anew. Choose, boy. Choose while you still can. As the tendrils of darkness threatened to engulf him, Mark fought against the tide, racing towards a knowledge he could hardly grasp. Would he be strong enough to save them, or had he just doomed them all with his choice? The darkness swirled, a thick mist that clawed at Mark's skin. Every breath felt heavy, as if the weight of the forest pressed down on him, urging him to surrender, to accept the twisted game it played. But the faces of his sisters, Emily and Sarah, flickered through the shadows, lighting a spark of determination deep within him. Their laughter, their memories, it was all he needed to propel forward. He ground his teeth, ready to fight, ready to dare this darkness to take him. Let them go! He shouted, defiance roaring in his voice as if in response. Tendrils of shadow reached out, coiling around his ankle like serpents, pulling at him, trying to drag him down into the void. Mark stumbled but regained his footing, eyes wide, heart thundering. He could feel the whispers, haunting him, echoing their cruel taunts. One must be lost, one must be lost, no. He cried out, fighting against the pull. I will choose to save all of them. And with those words, he summoned memories, each one brightening the choking mist. Laura's smile, the sound of Emily's laughter, and Sarah's innocent joy. It radiated hope, igniting something primal within him. The shadows recoiled, screeching in fury as Mark's will strengthened the flames of courage. A flash of light erupted from his chest, pure and bright, slicing through the suffocating darkness. Legions of whispers transformed into screams of pain as the shadows writhed. Mark. Emily's voice rang through the cacophony, piercing through the fear. We're here. Don't give up. He pushed closer to that voice, fueled by their bonds. Not just familial ties, but something deeper, a connection forged through shared battles and joy. As the last of the dark figure began to dissolve into the night, light spread outward, revealing a space where the shadows couldn't linger. The altar faded, the twisted doll crumbling to dust. Mark bolted, drawing strength from every heartbeat, heading toward where he felt their presence. Emily, Sarah, he called, each syllable a lifeline. The air grew brighter, the trees shouldering back their claws. Mark raced forward, eyes darting through the mist, and then, through the thinning shadows, he spotted them, his sisters clinging to a tree, fear plastered across their faces. His heart leaped. I'm here. He rushed toward them, arms outstretched. Mark, they cried simultaneously, relief spilling into their voices. He plunged into them, pulling them close, feeling their warmth envelop him. I thought I lost you. His voice trembled as tears blurred his vision. But as they huddled, that familiar whisper caught his ear again, a rustling behind them in the night. Mark spun, fear clenching his gut. The shadows had not vanished completely. Wait, he shouted, his heart racing as he noted the heavy figures shifting at the forest edge. Go, Emily urged, her voice shaking. We need to get out of here now. Run, Sarah echoed, eyes wide with terror. The forest was not done with them yet. They took off, feet pounding against the forest floor, the echo of their hurried breaths swirling in the night air. The whispers chased them, relentless and hungry. The shadows surged forward, clawing for their heels, as they pushed deeper into the winding paths of the woods, desperately seeking escape. "Keep going," Mark yelled, glancing behind Shadow's lunged. Whatever that darkness was, it hadn't given up. But they could be free. They had to be free. Branch after branch whipped against his skin as he sprinted through the underbrush, following the light filtering through the trees up ahead. Hope sparked a fire in his chest. "Mark, over here." Emily pointed, the bright glow breaking through the dark veil of the campsite. The flickering fire pulsed like a heartbeat, beckoning them. With renewed vigor, they closed in, adrenaline pounding in their veins. They reached the campfire just as the shadows lunged, only to be met by the angry glow. The dark shrieked, a sound like nails scratching against glass. "Get away from us," Mark shouted as he barricaded Emily and Sarah behind him. The shadows recoiled at the fire's glow, slinking back into the depths of the woods. "Is it really gone?" Sarah's voice shook, her hands gripping Mark's arm like a lifeline. For now Mark breathed, heart racing as the truth settled upon him. He could hardly believe they had escaped. Their breaths came easy as the fire crackled defiantly, and the shadows scurried, dissipating into the night. They had fought back and survived. But Mark knew they would always carry scars from this night. Mark gathered his sisters, arms encircling them tightly, gratitude washing through him. They were alive, and as painful as the ordeal had been, it had strengthened them, forged a new bond. "Whatever happens from here, we stick together. Always," he declared, feeling the warmth of their presence against the chill of the forest around them. As the stars shimmered above them, they huddled together, knowing together they had faced the horror and emerged victorious. And as dawn began to light the edges of the sky, each whispered prayer of thankfulness drifted into the cool breeze. They were free. For now, as they packed away their gear, laughter returned, a soft melody of resilience. Mark glanced at the trees one last time, a shiver tingling up his spine. They had lived to tell the tale, yet deep inside, he felt a flutter of unease, wondering if the forest would be lurking, just out of sight, waiting for its chance to play its game once again. But as long as they had each other, he knew they could confront whatever shadows dared return. Please, if you felt the grip of terror, if you want to hear more stories that send a shiver down your spine, you need to subscribe now to this channel. Don't miss exclusive tales that will keep you up at night. Smash that like button and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about our family's wild escape. And don't wait even 1 second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear this heart-stopping conclusion. You won't regret it.